I mentioned Seth Rollins. He appeared on Ryan Satin's Out of Character podcast for Fox Sports, and he talked about his recent NXT return. And he said something that I wanted to address here. He said, it was very cool for me to go back and have that moment. One of the things I talk about is helping the younger talent and pushing the industry forward. The opportunity was presented to me to go down to NXT, and I have not wrestled a match on the show in over 10 years. Obviously, it moved from Full Sail to the Performance Center, and the look, feel, and vibe was totally different, and it had gone through so many different iterations over the years, but it is still NXT. I cut a little promo after the show, and it didn't really dawn on me that it would feel sentimental until after when I got out of there, and I felt the audience, or when I got out there rather, and I felt the audience and I felt the connection. I had not wrestled in front of a crowd that small and intimate in a very long time. There is something special about wrestling in front of an intimate crowd like that in a small space. You'll see big bands do that, go back to these small bars and pack them out. There's something about that where you get a different experience as opposed to doing it in an arena or a stadium. Braun was a hell of an opponent. I was really happy to get down there and get in the ring with him and chit-chat with the other guys and girls. It was cool. I felt a lot of hunger to get to the next level. I was happy to see that. We were going through a period with NXT where there was a lot of complacency. And people talking about, I would rather stay in NXT. I don't want to go to the main roster. That always rubbed me the wrong way. When I went down there this past time, I felt a different energy, and I felt people were excited to come to the main roster and take their careers to the next level. That got me hyped. And that's cool, that he's all hyped up about the future talent. He sees talent down there that he knows he's going to be working with over the next 5 years. You know, he knows it on the main roster. Maybe at WrestleMania one day, he's going to be wrestling Braun Breaker, or he's going to be wrestling Carmelo Hayes, or Ilya Dragunov. So yeah, he's hyped up about that. And I get what he's saying as far as the complacency that he saw previously. In that, if you are on NXT, your goal should be to go to Raw or SmackDown and become a bigger star, and make Raw and SmackDown money, right? That should be the goal. I'm not sure what period he's specifically referring to, but there was a period of time where Triple H, and this was during the Black and Gold days, where Triple H openly talked about NXT as the third brand. This is not developmental. Not anymore. Even though it was never really not developmental, there was always a developmental aspect to the show. It wasn't literally stocked with just indie talent and nothing else, right? There were always some inexperienced, younger talents that were on the show. But he openly talked about it as, we are now a third brand. And then they got TV on USA Network. A lot of those guys, Gargano and Ciampa and the like, NXT was their home. They took pride in being part of that black and gold brand and making it what it was. What Seth Rollins saw as complacency, I see it as people who loved it there, who wanted to help out in any way they could, even putting others over, to make the NXT brand bigger at a time when WWE was treating it like it was its own brand on equal footing with Raw and SmackDown. And in fact, that 1 year at Survivor Series, right after AEW got started, NXT was in a head-to-head war. It was a head-to-head, well, not even a war, more like a skirmish. But it was in head-to-head competition for a while there with AEW at the beginning, right? That was the year WWE put NXT over Raw and SmackDown at Survivor Series. Now, why do you think they did that? You know exactly why they did that. Now, you couple that with the fact that plenty of NXT talent went to the main roster and fell victim to Vince McMahon's booking. Some of them went to the main roster and they just failed because maybe they weren't good enough, right? That happens too. But there were plenty of examples of NXT talents at that time who got called up to the main roster after having a pretty good run for themselves in NXT. And even if they didn't go on to become a world champion main eventer, they could have done more with them and they didn't. I can understand why they wouldn't want any part of that, and they would want to stay right where they were. Because they trusted Triple H to do right by them, or to have the freedom to try things that maybe they wouldn't have been able to do on Raw and SmackDown. He makes it sound like they were a bunch of lazy asses, or they were just scared of their own shadow or something. There was a time there for a while where they had good reason to be afraid of getting that call-up. That's why I used to say it's not a call up, it's a demotion. So-and-so just got called down to the main roster. That's how it felt for a while. Rollins never had that issue. He went from being the NXT champion to debuting on the main roster in the main event of Survivor Series and pushed as a headliner with Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose from day one. He was very fortunate. Not everybody is as fortunate as Seth Rollins. So I get why he would feel that way, but I think he's got his head in the clouds when it comes to that stuff if he can't understand why there were people who would not have wanted at that time to go to the main roster.